In fact, 42% of Jesus' parables actually deal with money. If you were to, and I'm not a mathematician, I don't know, figure this out, but it's been figured out. If you were to take all of the verses in all of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you would find that 1 out of every 10 in the Gospels deals with money. So we have to talk about it if we're going to be faithful to Scripture. In this passage, if I were to sum up these 13 verses, this is how I would sum it up. Jesus told his followers what their attitude should be toward money. And I'm going to use that term like old King James, mammon. It's not just money, but it's also the things that money can buy, right? Money or wealth or possessions. Jesus is teaching his followers what their attitude should be related to wealth, possessions, and money. So for us, 2,000 years removed, that translates quite well, actually, that Jesus has told us what our attitude should be toward wealth and possessions and money. He's told us how we should look at these things, how we should view these things. So I just want to simply, of this passage, ask this question. What should our attitude be toward wealth and possessions? How should we view them? I want to give you a few things from this passage as we seek to answer that question, because I think that's the question the text answers for us. First of all, we should receive wealth, possessions, money. We should receive them submissively. That is, when I say receive them submissively, that is, we should recognize who owns all of it. And it's not us. Verse 1, he said to the disciples, there's a rich man who had a manager, and charges were brought to him that this man was wasting his possessions. And I want you to catch that. The man was wasting his possessions, the owner's possessions, not the manager's possessions. They belong to the owner, not the manager. Verse 2, he called him and said to him, what is this that I hear about you? Turn in the account of management, for you can no longer be manager. In contemporary terms, this is what he was saying. Give me your records, clean out your desk, you're done. That's what he was saying. There was no confusing who was in charge. There was no confusing who was the owner. The manager got a little big for his britches, and he was subsequently humbled. Maybe he'd have avoided this whole process if he'd have received submissively from the get-go. Now, I'm reading in a little bit. This is a parable. But maybe if he'd have started out with a posture of submissiveness and recognized that they weren't, he would have avoided this entire process. I heard this quote one time, and I don't know where I got it from, but it's really good. Man owes his entire existence to a 6-inch layer of topsoil and the fact that it rains. I want you to think about that for a minute. I'm a farmer. We've established that before. But if you think about it, there's a whole lot of truth in that statement. We owe our entire existence not to McDonald's drive-thru, not to the grocery store, not to... We owe our existence to a essentially of topsoil and the fact that they weren't there for us. The conditions weren't just right. We wouldn't have anything that we need. We're not able to continue on. For those of you who are farming or have a farm background, you get this. People like me who have a cupboard full and a fridge full and just go to the store and buy what I need to be reminded of this. Listen, if we are in a posture of submission, when we receive wealth, when we receive possessions, we're always going to recognize that we don't actually own or deserve anything. That it really is God's and it's all on loan to us. if we truly lived that way? I think they would. I think if I lived in a consistent awareness of that, my life would change. Would the way that we thought about the church's money change if we lived that way? Maybe so. If we're to have a right attitude toward wealth, toward possessions, we need to receive them submissively. That is, we need to understand who the owner is, and it's not us. We should also manage shrewdly. I want you to see this in the text. In verse 4, the manager said to himself, "What shall I do since my master's taking the management away from me? I'm not strong enough to dig. I'm ashamed to beg." He was not a blue-collar man, to say the least. "I've decided what to do so that when I'm removed from management, people may receive me in their houses." So summoning his master's debtors, verse 5, one by one he said to the first, "How much do you owe my master?" The man said, 100 measures of oil. He said to him, "Take your bill, sit down quickly and write 50. And then he said to another, "How much do you owe?" He said, "I owe him 100 measures of wheat." He said, "Take your bill, write 80. Now, just real quick, in order to get the sense of how clever this was, we need to understand that it was actually illegal in Jewish culture to charge interest to fellow Jews. So what they did, there was always a workaround, right? What they did is, there was no such thing as principal and interest, so they just hid it all in the loan. It's not that they didn't charge it, it's just that they didn't highlight that they were charging it. And so sometimes there was as much as 100% interest on certain commodities. I think that's the difference between the oil and the wheat. So the manager was simply eliminating his cut of the profit. It was 100% markup on oil. Again, I'm not a mathematician, but you all who are, you get this when you see this. It was 100% on oil, 20% on wheat because it was a less inflammatory commodity at the time, I suppose. But here's what I want you to see. Jesus commends the man. Again, it's a parable. But he actually says that what the man does is good. Verse 8, the master commended the dishonest manager for his shrewdness. And that word shrewd can carry a negative connotation sometimes. It's not nefarious in this case. He's rather saying that the man was wise or he was prudent. The master commended the dishonest manager for his wisdom or his prudence. For the sons of this world, he says, are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than the sons of light. So understand, I think biblically, textually, Jesus was saying that shrewd management is a right attitude toward wealth and possessions. I think another place we see this, when Jesus is speaking to this, is in Luke chapter 19, in the parable of the minas. Remember, the man gives one man 10 minas, he gives another 5, he gives another 1, and 10 earns 10 more, and 5 earns 5 more, and the 1 buries his. And in Luke 19:23, when he gets to the one who buried his, he says, "Why do you not put my money in the bank, and at least at my coming I have collected it with interest?" I think there is some shrewdness that he's calling for there. Listen, we need to manage well what God gives. That's an important point. We need to manage well what God gives. I would dare, and I don't know your spending habits, so if you feel convicted, it has nothing to do with me knowing what you do with your money. But I would dare say many of us don't have a clue where our money is going, and that's not good.